I returned home just after sunset, when the sky still clung to that thin violet haze that always reminded me of a fading bruise. Soft at the edges, yet hiding something darker beneath, the light seeped through the kitchen window in long, diagonal streaks, settling over the marble countertops like watercolor shadows. The moment I stepped inside, the familiar scent of rosemary and lemon rose to greet me. Daniel's roast chicken, a comfort under normal circumstances. But tonight, the aroma felt altered, sharper. There was an almost metallic temps beneath the citrus, something that pricked the inside of my nose as if warning me to tread carefully. I hung my coat on the brass hook by the door, hearing the faint clatter of porcelain from the kitchen. The dishwasher hummed low, a sound too steady, too mechanical, against the otherwise still house. When I walked in, Anna stood at the island, her back a rigid line beneath her apron. She dried her hands on the fabric with stiff, repetitive strokes, as though scrubbing away something that wouldn't come off. Her lips were pressed so tightly they blanched. "Anna," I asked, my voice soft but carrying. She didn't answer, only nodded. Eyes lowered, shoulders trembling just enough for me to notice. Why does the air feel heavier tonight? Why is she avoiding my eyes? Before I could press her, Daniel drifted into the room behind me, all warm smiles and theatrical ease. He placed a hand on my shoulder, the gesture light but strangely possessive. "Long day, darling. Sit. You must be starving." His tone was syrupy, too sweet, the kind of sweetness that coats the tongue before revealing the bitterness beneath. I felt Anna stiffen at the sound of his voice. She darted a look at him, then at the plates waiting on the table. It was a fleeting glance, but fear has a distinct shape, and I recognized it instantly. Wide pupils, tightened throat, a swallow so hard it made her collarbone lift. The dining room looked immaculate to immaculate. The candles on the table flickered as though caught in a draft, though no windows were open. The chicken on my plate glistened under the warm light, but the glaze appeared darker than usual, almost muddy. A faint herbal note cut through the rosemary, bitter and unfamiliar. Even the steam rising from the dish looked different, heavier, like mist curling off a swamp. Daniel busied himself with a bottle of wine, pretending not to watch me, but I could feel his gaze grazing the side of my face, studying the tension in my jaw, measuring how long it might take for me to lift the fork. The cork popped sharply too loud for such a small sound, and Anna flinched as though it were a gunshot. "Everything all right?" I asked her quietly. She only shook her head, an almost imperceptible movement that made her earrings tremble. Then she did something she had never done in the 20 years she'd served this household. She approached me at the table. Her steps were hesitant, each one landing with the softest thud against the hardwood floor. She reached forward, hands trembling so visibly I feared she might drop the plate entirely. "Madam," her voice cracked. She swallowed again, and I saw her throat convulse. "Please, allow me." Before Daniel could object, she slid my plate away and replaced it with the one she had planned to eat herself. The porcelain made a delicate clicking sound as it touched the table, soft but final, a sound that told me something irrevocable had just shifted in this house. When she leaned in, her breath brushed the shell of my ear. "Your husband added a special ingredient." Her words were barely audible, but they cut through the air like a blade. The fine hairs on my arms rose, my pulse thudded behind my ears, thick and insistent. She stepped back, hands clenched around the edges of the plate she'd taken from me, as though it might explode if she loosened her grip. The entire room seemed to inhale at once, then hold its breath. Daniel's smile tightened, not falling, not cracking, just tightening, like fabric pulled too hard over a frame. He lifted his wineglass slowly, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. "Shall we begin?" he said, each syllable perfectly paced, like lines rehearsed in front of a mirror. I answered with a nod, calm on the outside, my mind unraveling on the inside. The shadows on the walls stretched long behind him, bending strangely as though reacting to his movement. The candle flames flickered again, narrow and tall, casting trembling shapes across the tablecloth. What did he expect to happen when I took that first bite? And why does Anna look like she's expecting someone to die tonight? The fork in my hand felt suddenly colder, heavier, and the question pulsed loud enough to drown the hum of the dishwasher. What exactly did Daniel put on that plate? I woke the next morning with the sour aftertaste of fear coating my tongue, as though the night had left a residue inside my mouth that no amount of water could wash away. Anna's whisper repeated in my mind, looping like a damaged record, soft, distorted, and impossible to silence. The air in my bedroom felt still unnervingly cold for early morning. Even the curtains hung motionless, their folds stiff like frozen waves. That my first realization came as a quiet ache of wrongness. The house was too silent, no clatter of dishes, no humming from Daniel as he straightened his tie, no habitual clearing of his throat just before he poured the coffee. Daniel never left before breakfast, never, yet the indentation on his side of the bed had already cooled. A knot pulsed in my stomach as I walked down the hallway. Each step seemed to magnify the emptiness of the house. The scent of last night's dinner had vanished entirely, replaced by the sterile nothingness of morning air. When I reached the kitchen, I saw the first sign that something had been deliberately erased. The trash bin was empty, completely empty. Not a bone, not a damp paper towel, not a trace of the food we hadn't eaten. Instead, the inside glimmered with an unnatural cleanliness, as though someone had scrubbed it meticulously. The plastic liner smelled faintly of bleach and tima, combination that made my throat tighten. I ran my fingertips along the counter. There was a residue thin, sticky, and slightly gritty, gathering in a streak near the cutting board's usual place. I lifted my hand and inhaled. The scent rose softly, strangely, crushed wild herbs laced with something chemical, something sharp, sterile, like a hospital trying to disguise its disinfectant with a touch of the countryside. I steadied myself and called for aid. She walked into the living room slowly, apron twisting between her fingers, her shoulders hunched as though bracing for punishment. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Anna," I said, keeping my voice firm but gentle. "Last night, what did you mean?" For a long moment, she said nothing. The silence between us thickened, stretched. Then she finally sat, palms pressed against her knees, damp with sweat. When she spoke, her voice shook like thin glass. "I heard them," she whispered, "2 nights ago. I didn't mean to listen, madame. I heard him." She swallowed hard, then mimicked Daniel's voice low, practiced, chillingly familiar. "It has to look natural. She eats everything I give her." Those words drifted across the room like smoke, heavy and toxic. My hands curled into my lap, fingernails digging into my palms to anchor myself. He slammed a drawer. Anna continued. "Then I heard the vials, little glass ones, clinking." She shuddered. He said, "Just a few drops." She slept through it. The room darkened around me, not visibly, but perceptually, as though the air itself grew denser. And then her memory sharpened into a vivid flashback, unfolding between us. Anna described standing by the pantry door, her breath shallow, her heart pounding hard enough to make her vision pulse. Through the narrow opening, she watched Daniel's silhouette shift in the dim kitchen light. His movements were restless, agitated. The smell drifting from the counter was sharp and medicinal, something that didn't belong anywhere near food. And then his voice again, more agitated this time. "Martha can't find out yet. Not until after the papers are signed." The words struck me with a coldness so profound it felt like stepping into ice water. What papers? What unexpected milestone loomed over my head? What version of Daniel had I been sleeping beside all these years? By the time I rose from the chair, my legs felt numb. I thanked Anna quietly, though my voice barely stretched beyond a whisper. There was no anger, only a creeping, hollow dread that settled deeper with every breath. Later that afternoon, after pacing the length of the hallway more times than I could count, I walked to Daniel's study. The door creaked softly as I pushed it open. Golden afternoon light spilled across the bookshelves, catching dust in the air, dust that seemed to glow like drifting ash. His desk was perfectly arranged, pens aligned, papers squared, nothing out of place, nothing except the locked drawer. The metal handle felt cold under my fingers. As I knelt to inspect it, I noticed faint scratches around the keyhole, tiny, desperate marks, as if someone had tried to pry it open before. My hands trembled as I used the small spare key he never knew I'd found years ago. Inside, there was a folder, thick, heavier than it should have been. I opened it slowly. Bank statements I'd never seen, large transfers, withdrawals, multiple accounts, insurance documents bearing my name, and tucked inside, like a final confession, a torn page of Daniel's handwriting. His rushed, slanted script read, "Ensure she takes it willingly." The word willingly burned through me, twisting my breath into something jagged. What had he been preparing for me? And why did every piece of evidence point toward a betrayal deeper and closer than I ever imagined?
Night fell over the house like a dropped velvet curtain, heavy and theatrical, smothering every surface with a darkness that felt almost sentient. The rooms no longer resembled the home I had cultivated for decades. They had transformed into a stage where truth and danger would finally meet, face to face. The shadows clung to the walls, stretched long and patient, as though leaning in to listen. Even the air seemed to thicken, carrying a faint chill that gathered in the crooks of my elbows and the base of my spine. I sat at the dining table, the same table from the night before. My fingertips drifted across the wood, tracing the faint, rough patch where Anna had swapped the plates. The grain felt different there, almost raised, as if the wood itself remembered the moment and carried its tension beneath the surface. I inhaled slowly, letting the earthy scent of oak and lingering lemon polish ground me. When Daniel finally entered the room, he didn't bother removing his coat. The fabric was still dusted with the cold of the night, and it held the scent of his cologne, spicy, assertive. But beneath it, I detected something colder, metallic, like the afterscent of a recently opened safe. His expression was tight, controlled, the practiced neutrality of a man accustomed to negotiations and rehearsed charm. "We need to talk," he said, his voice clipped as a snapped twig. I folded my hands in my lap. "Yes," I replied, my tone smooth as still water. "About the special ingredient." His jaw tightened, the muscle there twitching once, betraying the composure he fought to maintain. He dropped his briefcase onto the table with unnecessary force. The sound echoed like a gunshot, cracking through the room and sending a shiver through the shadows. From the corner of my eye, I saw Anna flinch where she stood half-hidden in the doorway. "Anna has been filling your head with nonsense," he said sharply, though there was a tremor beneath the words. "You know how she gets." I rose from the chair slowly, the legs scraping softly against the flooring, a whisper in the charged air. "Then why the insurance papers?" I asked. "Why the transfer documents? And why, Daniel, were you preparing something that required me to be incapacitated?" He stepped closer, too close. The distance between us pulsed with tension, a taut string ready to snap. His cologne wrapped around me like smoke, sharp and insistent, but unable to mask the colder scent beneath, the scent of panic. "I did what I had to do," he snapped. "You weren't supposed to know yet. The deal, our future, depends on timing." I let out a careful breath. Drugging your wife is part of our future. The question landed like a stone dropped into deep water. For a heartbeat, Daniel said nothing. Then he exploded. "You don't understand what's at stake." His voice ricocheted off the walls, vibrating through the room so hard that one of the candle flames sputtered. Anna shrank back, fingers clutching the doorframe as though it were the only tether keeping her upright. I leaned forward, meeting his fury with cold steadiness. "Then explain, right now, because last night I was one bite away from becoming your casualty." The word hung between us like a blade. His mask cracked, just slightly, but enough. His shoulders sagged, and the fire in his eyes dimmed to something hollow, almost frightened. When he finally spoke, his voice came out low, unsteady. "The investors needed control," he murmured. "They wanted proof you wouldn't interfere. I just needed you asleep, not harmed." But his trembling hands contradicted him. His darting gaze contradicted him. Even the uneven rhythm of his breath contradicted him. His lies wavered like a spotlight flickering over an actor who'd forgotten his lines. I felt the room shift around us. The very air seemed to recoil. Then Anna stepped forward. She held a plastic bag in her hands, the kind used for storing leftovers. Inside it, wrapped in clear film, lay the dinner plate, the plate she had taken from me. The glaze still clung to it in darkened streaks, dull under the kitchen lighting yet ominous all the same. "Madam kept this," Anna said, her voice soft but steady. "It will tell the truth." Daniel's eyes locked onto the bag. In that instant, every shred of false composure vanished. He lunged. I moved before I consciously understood the motion. My arm shot out, blocking his path. His coat brushed my sleeve, cold and stiff, carrying with it the scent of the night air. The impact of stopping him reverberated through my bones, a shockwave of adrenaline that brought clarity, ferocity, purpose. He froze, stunned that I had intercepted him. His breath hitched, shallow and desperate, fogging the air between us. The candle flames flickered wildly, dancing shadows across his face until he looked like a man carved out of fractured darkness. Anna clutched the bag tighter, stepping back. Daniel's hands curled into fists, his expression twisting into something raw and unmasked. In that suspended moment, charged, electric, suffocating, the truth finally stood naked between us. Every lie, every carefully hidden intention, every simmering threat breaking open like a fault line rupturing under pressure. And I knew. This wasn't about dinner anymore. What was Daniel so desperate to hide that he would risk everything to stop us from seeing it? 2 days later, the police report lay on my dining table, its stark black lettering illuminated by the pale morning light filtering through the sheer curtains. The pages felt heavier than they should have, as though the weight of everything they confirmed pressed into the fibers. I had read the report twice already, yet my eyes drifted once more to the key line, the line the laboratory had highlighted in neat yellow ink. The residue contains a concentrated sedative capable of producing prolonged unconsciousness. Not lethal, no, but certainty has a way of cutting deeper than poison ever could. This was intentional, calculated, prepared. Daniel was being questioned at the station. His business dealings, once decorated with glossy promises and curated charm, were beginning to unravel like rotten twine pulled from a forgotten attic trunk. Every knot he'd tied was coming loose under scrutiny, and I imagined him sitting under the fluorescent lights, coat wrinkled, hands no longer steady, explaining why a man might drug his wife for her own good. The house felt different now, emptier of shadows, fuller of breath. The rosemary scent that once clung to the walls had vanished. I kept the windows open despite the winter air. The crisp chills swept through the rooms, carrying away the heaviness that had settled there for far too long. The curtains fluttered gently, and for the first time in days, I heard the house exhale. As I walked through the kitchen, my fingertips gliding along the cool marble countertop, I felt again the faint memory of that gritty residue, the unspoken danger that had nearly woven itself into my veins. The afternoon light refracted across the polished surface, scattering into soft, fractured glimmers. Everything looked the same, yet nothing was. Behind me, Anna moved quietly, folding her aprons and tucking them into a small canvas bag. Her movements were delicate, almost hesitant, as though she feared disturbing whatever fragile peace had begun to settle here. I watched her for a moment before speaking. "You saved my life," I said, the words emerging softer than I intended, yet steady enough to carry the truth. Anna turned, eyes glossy with unshed tears. "You deserve to know," she said, her voice trembling with emotion she tried to hide. "Everyone deserves the truth, madam." Her smile wavered, small and unsure, but it held a bravery far greater than she realized. I stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her arm. "You were the only one who saw what I could not," I whispered. "I won't forget that." And I meant it. In a world where trust had become a currency spent too easily, Anna had offered loyalty without expectation. When she nodded and resumed packing, I allowed her the space to finish, standing quietly as the sounds of folding fabric and soft footsteps filled the room. It struck me then how silence could transform, once suffocating, now settling like a clean snowfall over the remnants of chaos. Later, alone in the living room, I turned the events over in my mind like stones in my palm, each one with its own shape, its own weight, its own cold truth. I thought of Daniel's forced smile, the trembling hands, the glint of desperation in his eyes. I thought of the clink of vials, the slammed drawer, the special ingredient whispered into my ear like a warning from fate itself. And beneath it all, I felt a quiet, haunting question settle into my bones. How close had I come to trusting myself into oblivion? The answer, I feared, was far too close. Betrayal does not announce itself with poison. It does not always wear villainy like a mask. No, betrayal begins the moment someone decides your fear is useful. The moment your vulnerability becomes a lever. That was Daniel's first crime, long before the sedative ever touched a plate. That evening, as I locked the door behind me, the streetlights flickered on in a soft cascade, each lamp humming awake with a warm golden glow. Their reflections stretched along the damp pavement like slender ribbons of light guiding my path. I drew in a slow breath, tasting winter on my tongue, cold, clean, edged with freedom. Bitterness lingered there too, faint but undeniable, a reminder that survival often carries its own aftertaste. I stepped forward, letting the night air wrap around me like a new beginning. Some dinners change your life, I realized, not because of what's on the plate, but because of who tries to serve it. Secrets have a way of surfacing, don't they? If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel. I have many more locked away in this library, waiting for you.